time to get into the big news. Before this race kicked off, in a flash interview before the race got uploaded to YouTube and then is used by the broadcasters, Roglic was asked as part of that, just the last throwaway question. Oh yeah, by the way, what's been going on with the merger news? And he said, I can definitely confirm that I will be leaving the team, but we want to tell all the details after the races that I'll do. So that means the details of where he's going will be after Lombardia. We thank you as pro podcasters. That means we get 2 podcasts for the price of 1, because we can do a podcast reacting to the team announcement in a week and a half. So thanks for that. But this is news, Benji, but it's kind of been, this has been not almost beyond a rumor, like for the last week or so.
Certainly, it started quite a bit ago, as in, I feel like there's been plenty of like conversations about Roglic potentially leaving over the last few years, but nothing with real substantial evidence behind it, in my opinion. And then we really saw that intensify, the feeling of, Roglic might actually be looking for the exit during La Vuelta, during stage 17, the Angliru stage, and the whole conversation of Roglic wanting to race for the victory, and then eventually the team deciding that they wanted for Sepp Kuss to win the race. And maybe that internally would also cause some issues. Maybe that changes his view on where he wants to ride in the future. He wants that sole leadership maybe. But it's also before that, I reckon, like, if you look at the Giro, for example, this year, he rode that, then he didn't ride the Tour de France. What is the story behind that? But to really picture a full story here, I think we need to go back to the entire start of Roglic and Lotto and El Jumbo at the time. Those are the old days. And I recall him riding at Adria Mobil, winning, was it on the...
Azerbaijan against Horner.
Also, but also on the Trikrilje or something climb in Slovenia.
Oh, yeah.
I recall something like that. He was picked up the year after, was it 2016, to join Lotto and El Jumbo. And let's be honest about it. The history of the team at that point, after Rabobank basically fell, they jumped into, I don't know, Blanco, I think the team was called at a certain year, Belkin in a different year. They didn't have the greatest years during those years. And it was really Groenewegen and Roglic that kickstarted the team's success again in 2016, 2017. I think Groenewegen had 11 victories in 2016 when Roglic joined. Roglic already started winning at the top level in that year, because was it in 2016 where he had the initial time trial at the Giro showed up in Apeldoorn?
On this very climb, no?
That's later. That's 2019.
Oh, okay.
Apeldoorn time trial, where Dumoulin barely beat him in the initial time trial. And then there was another time trial that he straight up won, a 40-kilometer time trial. Roglic kind of came out of, for many people, mainstream viewers, nowhere. He's obviously was building up to that point, but he really hit the big steps at that point. But that was as a TT rider. We saw him solely as a TT rider then, and I feel like it then evolved over the course of 2 Tour de France's before he was really doing GCs, right?
Yeah, he wasn't, just crushing stage races straight out of the gate, particularly on longer climbs. Maybe he was carrying sort of some more muscle from his previous sport. He did win in 2017, that stage in Serre Chevalier, which was, I think, a solo. So, he's already winning Tour de France stages for Jumbo-Visma, who in 2015, I think, won 5 or 7 races. Then, that's over 20 races in 2017, I think, with, those tour stages. So, he, as you said, he was crushing TTs like Romandy, ZLM, País Vasco. But in País Vasco, he came 5th that year, and then it just intensified with winning like all these one-weekers, like Romandy in 18. There's too many. I can't go through every race. He's won basically every race. And then the Giro disappointment in 2019, but on the podium, and then winning the Vuelta that year, and that was Jumbo's first ever Grand Tour victory, I think. Pretty sure. And then the Tour de France 2020 he was the big favorite for it, and he won Tour de l'Ain going into it, and then disappointment. Then came back and won the Vuelta, won Olympic gold medal, 3 Vueltas. Like, he just 80 wins. I'm not sure if all of them were on Jumbo, the pro wins. I think a few of them were on Adria Mobil, as I said. But yeah, he's
won everything you want to win as a GC rider, except the Tour de France,
Yep.
which he got really close to in 2021 when he was at an absolute godlike level, which
Yeah.
he's not too far away from at the moment. It's higher in 2020, I reckon, but it's not so far away, no?
It's not that far, no. 2020, he was incredible. Like, I think he could have won that race. I really do. Even with the TT en planche de Belfi, he was really, really good. And he's still incredible. Like this year, winning the Giro, Jumbo, I think, have won like every race he's participated in, because they won the Vuelta, which he didn't win, but he could have won that as well. So the Giro, Tirreno, Catalunya, Giro dell'Emilia, keeps winning. Yes, he's 34, but like his level, 33, sorry. He's turned 34 in a month, but his level is still outstanding. So I guess that's the sort of the journey with Roglic at Jumbo. They've gone on to then become a serious GC team very quickly, and also won the Tour now with Vingegaard. But what's precipitated this, Benji? Because like since Vuelta, did this just happen from the Vuelta stage 17, or has this been simmering in the background?
I reckon it's been simmering in the background if I look at it externally, because it's also, he was always at the top of the food chain in Jumbo-Visma, and that gradually changed when Jonas Vingegaard stepped onto the forefront, to the point that now Jonas Vingegaard is seen as the ultimate king of GC ridership in the entire peloton. He's the best climber in the world, and that puts Roglic on the second step in the team when it comes to GC. And we see that throughout the year as well, but also we see that, for example, well, obviously if Vingegaard wins the Tour and then the next year he wins the Tour again, then Vingegaard can decide what races he wants to ride. But the questions then are, before this season, for example, Roglic chooses to go for the Giro d'Italia because he wants sole leadership. Would he have been offered co-leadership at the Tour de France? I've heard that that's the case. And if that's the case, then he chose the Giro to do sole leadership, which is fine. Like, he ends up winning that Giro, where he shows that he can still win the Grand Tours that he shows up for. The question then is, in the Tour de France, like, does it hurt him that he hasn't won the Tour de France? I reckon it does. And does he believe his chance is bigger as a sole leader in a different team than as a dual leader with Vingegaard at Jumbo-Visma? What is your opinion, and what do you think he thinks?
Well, that's on the assumption he wants to leave, right? And we just assume he wants to leave, because why would Jumbo, just say, oh, okay, bye-bye to a rider that's won 70 races with them and just won a Grand Tour podium to another, and you've seen how good he is. So he clearly wants to leave. And your point is, does it increase his Tour de France win probability by going to another team, we'll discuss which in a second, or being on Jonas Vingegaard's team? Now, Sepp Kuss win probability for the Vuelta, I would say, increased by being on the team of Jumbo-Visma, but Roglic Vuelta win probability may be decreased. But that might just be how the race panned out. So
the thing is, that might have been different if Kuss was not the GC rider necessarily, where Roglic might have been the second rider in GC, and therefore might have been the one attacking early and create situations like that. Because Kuss got into that position, it's the third rider, and Roglic became kind of the third wheel on the wagon, if that makes any sense, because he was kind of stuck where Jonas was the one to attack because he was the furthest away, and Kuss was ahead, and he was kind of in between there, kind of stuck, because he's also not really he's the finisher rider, eh? He's not often the rider that attacks from very far and gains 3 minutes on a stage.
No, he waits and sits, and like we saw in Emilia today, and then finishes off the job with his 500-meter or 30-second burst. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it increases his Tour de France win probability, if I'm frank. But he probably wants a team which says, Primoz, you are our tour leader. Tell us the team you want us to bring. These are the tactics we want to do with you. Are you happy with them? The tactics are all catered around you. No sprinter, no lead outs. You kind of like the Jumbo Giro, frankly.
Exactly. Koy was left home.
Yeah.
Because I bet if if Roglic before this year chooses to do the Tour de France as co-leader with Jonas Vingegaard at the start of the Tour de France 2023, then I believe Olaf Kooi starts the Giro.
Yeah, probably. Because they need to win some stages. And
otherwise they have Dumoulin and Foss again.
Dumoulin's not. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Foss,
same
Foss.
scenario.
Yeah, it would be exactly. It'd be Cohen Bowman and who else? So, yeah, you're right. So that's probably what he wants. And that's fair enough. That's fair enough. He's looking at how many peak years do I have left? I would say he's still in his peak. How many peak years do I have left? He doesn't probably want to run the risk of, he probably just wants to know, even if he gets beaten, that he got
best out of it.
But I still don't think that increases his Tour de France win probability, by the way. But I'm just saying how I think he might be looking at it.
He might not want to feel chained necessarily to someone else in the team and therefore have things happen that might not be 100% be in his control. He wants control of the situation, is how I see it. To be able to know afterwards that the performance he put was the best he could have put in that race. Does that make any sense? That's how I view it.
I agree. I agree with what you said.
I lost plot of what I was saying halfway through, but if it makes sense, it makes sense. And that, I reckon it's probably a good thing for cycling that Roglic and Vingegaard get divided depending on
for sure
what happens outside of that with the whole merger thing that is happening with Jumbo-Visma and Soudal, the whole rumor towards that. Now, around that, the question then is this a good thing for Jumbo-Visma? And I'm like, well, losing one of your two leaders is not necessarily a good thing. I think they're still fine with Vingegaard, but there's also the possibility that someone else joins. It all depends on what happens with this entire merger rumor.
Yeah.
If Remco joins as second leader, then I'd happily trade Roglic for Remco. I will say, Remco is not at Roglic's level in GC terms at this point, but he's way more future-proof than Roglic is.
Yeah, and also there's a big Ardennes gap in the Jumbo team. In the Ardennes, they have not performed at the standard they have performed at in the Cobble Club. Obviously, Remco is not just for Ardennes, let's be real. It'd be for GC.
It's a choice, eh?
Yeah.
Within Jumbo, Roglic can do the Ardennes and be good at them, eh?
He can, but Remco on Liège pretty comfortably, But Remco's also a GC rider. But you're right. I agree. Roglic, if you said, okay, 1 week race, next week, balanced parcours, who you taking? On this year's evidence, you would have to take Roglic. It's just because he gets the job done 99.9% of the time if he has no crashes or incidents. So with that being said, Benji, could Jumbo have avoided this? Because I don't think Roglic won a lot of World Tour races this year, man. Catalunya, Tirreno, 2 Vuelta stages, 3rd in the Vuelta, Burgos. That's a lot of wins out the door, high-level wins.
Yeah.
And without him, you don't do the Grand Tour triple. Could they have avoided this? Should they have avoided this? Or is this a case of, like with Groenewegen, you don't want to have an unhappy rider in the team. If it's best for everybody, we go our separate ways.
I fully agree that the best thing to do in Jumbo's situation is a mutual agreement to have Roglic leave if he's unhappy there. I don't want riders imprisoned in a team in the same way that I didn't want them to be imprisoned at DSM when we had all those cases of DSM riders disappearing to other teams during their contract. In the same way that I don't want Roglic to feel stuck in Jumbo-Visma so that he feels free to do whatever he wants in cycling. Yes, contracts matter, but if there's a mutual agreement, then it's probably better for both teams and the relay. The atmosphere within the team will also be better as a consequence, I reckon. But that being said, was it inevitable or could it have been avoided by adapting the race schedule and so forth? I think that's hard because if you go to the Tour de France with, let's say Roglic chooses to do the Tour de France at the start of the year as co-leader with Vingegaard, which would have been an option, then you look at that and you're like, there's a large chance that Vingegaard just straight up wins in the same way he does, and Roglic once again feels like he's a second wheel on the one-wheeled car. That's a very weird expression, but I just said it anyway. Like he would feel a bit redundant in that Tour de France, I reckon, and that would also probably lead to him thinking maybe I should go to another team. And I don't know. I don't know if, I bet if the team decided at the Vuelta, we're all racing for it, it wouldn't have mattered at all for this, I reckon.
Yeah, I think the Vuelta also from, the Jumbo's perspective, you'd be looking at that third week thinking, wow, about to win our third Grand Tour with a 1, 2, 3 on the podium, and this has turned into a complete soap opera. And they probably don't want to imagine that playing out in the Tour next year again. Like the Tour is a different beast. They've got the Netflix cameras there. So maybe it's a bit of that as well. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's more a case of you don't, like, these guys have to do altitude camps 4 months a year. They've got to weigh every gram of food. That requires a high degree of internal motivation. And if a rider's not motivated because they feel like the structure isn't the best for them, then it's not the best for the team. It's not the best for the rider. And so with Groenewegen, he got to go to Jayco. He won a Tour de France stage there, got to go to the Tour. And with Roglic, it looks to be much of the same.
And then the last thing that you could think of when it comes to, was it avoidable? Could it have been avoided by not sending Jonas Vingegaard to the Vuelta in the first place? But that was decided before Roglic even started the Giro.
It was in November.
So if it's decided in November last year, which was the case, then that's not a discussion. Roglic knew that before the year started. So it's not that they decided that after the Tour de France. Some people are insinuating that publicly, but that's just not the case. So I'm looking at that like, okay, what would give Roglic and not Vingegaard the right to do 2 Grand Tours as main leader of Jumbo? Why should Vingegaard stop himself from saying, I want to ride the Vuelta? Vingegaard is the real king of Jumbo-Visma at the moment. Then they can say what they want about Roglic is our king. Yeah, in the past he has carried the team definitely, but Vingegaard is the top dog in the team. And in my opinion, his race schedule and desires matter more than Roglic in this year.
Well, yeah, like if you win the Tour twice, and this year he won the Tour by 7.5 minutes, no co-leader.
Fuck, man.
I'm sorry, but he's the best Grand Tour rider in the world, and he's only 26. So, but yeah, I understand it from both sides. And anyway, let's get to the juicy stuff, which is where is he going to go? Because Daniel Benson over at GCN, he did a tweet basically doing a short list of 7 teams where Roglic might go. And we'll start with, let me just get rid of a couple. Bahrain, they got no money. They've not signed anyone that costs any money for 2 years.
Exactly. That's the thing, eh? Like, people are saying like, okay, there's like the Bahraini government, they've got a lot of money, they're investing all in this team. That's seemingly not the case, based on the transfer policy the last few years. And even with Landa going, maybe that Landa money could come in, but that's by far not enough to sign Roglic at the moment. So that's not happening. And there's quite a bit of teams on that list that I never really believed in. There was a big Movistar rumor also on the list, where I think it was Highland in Belgium.
There's no way you go there because they have neither money nor performance.
Yeah.
Neither of the two things.
Exactly. And like a team that Roglic will want to go to, in my eyes, is a team that has a good TT setup to begin with.
Yeah.
So I'm already scrapping all the teams that don't have a good TT setup. Like, Israel is still in the running, but I just don't see it happening.
He's still so good. Like, okay, he's 30, nearly turning 34, but he's not where Froome was. Like, if I was Israel though, I would offer him a huge bag, because if you get Roglic, you're getting promoted. So you're getting promoted in 2 years, and he takes you straight to Grand Tour relevancy and Classics relevancy. So of course they should go for it, but he'd be looking at that factors, TT setup, the general performance culture, and be like, no, this is not the level it needs to be. So unless he really just wants a huge bag. But the problem is, well, no, not the problem. The problem for Israel is, yes, that there are other big teams with advantages who will also probably offer big money. I thought Jayco was actually a dark horse because they got the Alula Saudi money, and they also have a great TT setup. They are a GC-focused team. They've even won a Grand Tour in the last 5 years. They denied a deal, according to Benson. So we've scrapped Israel, Movistar, Jayco, Bahrain. Little I thought were a really strong candidate in theory, But
Yeah.
they're probably looking at their roster, Benji, thinking, fuck, why did we give all this money away in April?
It's true, because like they spent so much money early in the transfer season, and we had this discussion last year with the B&B collapse. Very different story with all the leftover riders and potential merging rumors and so forth at the moment, that there's just so many uncertainties on the market where Lidl has now signed all these riders and they might be like, ooh, my wallet is empty. And personal opinion, I reckon Lidl probably just doesn't have the money anymore to sign Roglic. And there's only a limited amount of teams that do have the money left.
Bora and Ineos. And Bora have won a Grand Tour as recently as last year. Last year, Hindley beat Carapaz, 2022. And Ineos won a lot of Grand Tours in the past. And, you know, they got a good TT set up with Pinarello and Bigham there as well. They both got money. Bora, I think the Bora, the company, extended their contract with the team till what, 27, 28?
Yeah.
They've also they missed out on Pidcock. They offered him the bag, I heard. The guys they signed not cheap. So they has to have money. Hindley, Vlasov was not cheap. Higuita would not have been cheap. And now Martinez, even if it's a 1 year, I know that's not cheap. And so for Roglic, for them, if you're looking at, like, Vlasov is not the solution. This is last year, next year. Hindley, I think, is their best GC rider. Kjan is developing. But Roglic just slots straight in there. Gets on the special TT setup. So there's a slot there at Bora.
I agree. And it's also the philosophy of their transfer policies of the last few years. They've been signing these tier 2, tier 3 GC riders over the years that you just mentioned. But after winning the Giro, they're just looking to win the Tour de France. And Rolf Denk has mentioned that numerous times now.
It's the ultimate goal of anything.
Exactly. Now, whether Roglic will win the Tour de France at any point in the future, it's going to be really difficult against Vingegaard and Pogacar. That's for certain. But it's the closest thing you're going to get to a Grand Tour, Tour de France potential candidate at the moment on the market is Roglic. So that's also an indicator to me where that fits in that whole ID process. There's also numerous other reasons. I've had some conversations with potential insiders that were saying they were suddenly really excited about a merger last week. So who knows? That might also be a part of that story. That might also be a small hint at that. But also next to that, I reckon it was Daniel Friebe who posted on Twitter that
he did some sleuthing.
Mate, the dude has a picture
Sherlock
of a wall,
Holmes.
of a wooden wall with wooden panels,
Friebe
with a random
Rainbow
tree in front of it. Yeah, exactly. And he went on the search of which building that was.
Crazy.
Because that's where Roglic was spotted. And turns out that was the Red Bull Athletic Center in Salzburg.
In Austria.
And I looked up that building, and the wall looks exactly the same as the picture with the trees in front of it. I'm absolutely mind blown. And I gotta be honest, it's been a few days now, 3-4 days where I've really tunnel visioned on Bora being the actual team that Roglic would end up going to. Like, ever since the rumors that he was going to be leaving, I felt like Bora was a good candidate because all those things combined is the case. So I'm so tunnel visioned that I'm not even looking at Ineos anymore, but we gotta look at it because maybe I'm too tunnel visioned.
Well, it depends. Maybe they played Eine kleine Nacht music for him at Salzburg.
By the way, they also tried with Remco, eh? They also tried, what was it? X amount of million.
Bora are happy to just go get something from another team. They don't want to just like develop in their own structure too much. So that's Bora. I agree. Makes a lot of sense. Rouleurs, big question marks, I got to say. With Pollitt leaving, good luck with that. But Hindley can be. That's literally a super domestique, a man who's won a Grand Tour.
Yes, but he needs to want to as well. So it's kind of like Vlasov and Hindley didn't sign up at Bora to be a super domestique.
No chance he does it.
Contract year. I feel like won't be a problem because I reckon he can ride the Giro while Roglic can ride the Tour de France.
Yeah,
and he's already hinted at the next couple of years that he is trying to show off in the last Vuelta for Bora and for other teams that he can ride a top 10 NGC in 3 weeks.
They need to extend Hindley, and then he goes to Tour with Roglic. If I'm Hindley and I don't have a big extension, no, I'm not doing that. but maybe I'm a bad person. Ineos, the sort of the elephant in the room. What are they doing? Like everyone, a lot of people have been asking, where's the podcast, etc. And there was the bombshell last Sunday from Kirchhoff's. Patrick Lefebvre said in his article today that there should be some news in 3 days or 2 days or something.
Yeah.
That can't go on for much longer. But Ineos and Movistar, they've announced no renewals. The day after last Monday, after the Wielerflitz article, Benson reported that Ineos suddenly sent the draft contracts out to people. Don't know if it's a coincidence to the extensions. I heard they were trying to merge. There was talks about merging with Movistar. Now, how that makes any sense when they just had maybe not antagonistic, but a fight over Carlos Rodriguez a month and a half ago. I mean, so neither announced any renewals. They got Movistar have 7 riders on the contract for next year publicly, and then Ineos, it's like, what are they doing? So they could be trying to merge with Movistar. Maybe not. Probably a bit late for that.
I feel like
it makes no sense.
I read an article by in Marca. I'm trying to find it while I'm talking, from a guy named Nacho.
Nacho Labarga, he's the Marca big cycling journo.
He's really good at those like Movistar Spanish centered storylines, and he really went through the potential cyclists that they're signing, the potential cyclists that they could renew and so forth, and that story made sense to the point that I do not believe in a merger with Ineos.
Yeah, we would have heard more stuff by now because they got to submit documents in 2 weeks to the UCI. It would have leaked.
Exactly. So I don't believe in that merger anymore. I believe Movistar and Ineos will just go separately. The question mark is, what will those teams look like? Movistar, I feel like I've got a better idea of Movistar than I do about Ineos, because Ineos is kind of like...
Well, it makes no sense, right? So let's say they're not merging.
Yeah.
Say Ineos, their plan is to hang out for Remco or Roglic. They want to get one of Remco or Roglic out of either the merger or Roglic leaving.
Yeah. That
doesn't stop you announcing the renewals. That's one or maximum 2 riders if you somehow get both. Doubt it. So why couldn't you announce the renewals? So that's what I don't understand, why neither team they're not obliged to announce them, but it's just very strange to me. So Ineos is obviously a natural landing destination for Primoz Roglic. Yes, Geraint Thomas has had a great level in the Giro d'Italia, but ultimately for someone to win 1 weeks, for someone to win Healy Classics, for someone to contest for the Tour de France podium or maybe win, Roglic is a step above Geraint Thomas, and so it makes sense that they can get him there. They might even think they can improve his all-round TT setup. It's also the Olympics next year, which is big for that team, and they could get 3 guys of their team on the Olympic podium if Remco has a bad day. I don't know, Roglic Tarling. So it's a natural landing destination for them, and you can rinse and repeat Thomas at the Giro. Rodriguez super domestique like Bernal was for Thomas and Froome back in the day. They've got probably better rouleurs than Bora. They've got the know-how. That is, people do say that they got the know-how. Do they have the know-how?
I feel like they have the know-how when it comes to the preparation for the riders and so forth. But I am less trustworthy in their tactics being too traditional at this point. Although the tactics can be traditional with Roglic, because he is the kind of rider that you put on the back of the train, go to the last kilometer with, and sprint away in the last 500 meters.
He fits the system perfectly.
Exactly. So tactically, he really fits well in that team. But there's just something the money?
That... We assume they have the money.
Yeah.
But the purse strings, I've heard, have gotten a little bit tight. Or tighter than they have been. And Thomas even said this on What's Occurring recently. He said, everyone assumes we're just the biggest budget, but I'll tell you, things are not run the same way they were at Sky, where it was, hey, you want this? Open checkbook, here you go. It's a little bit different now. So with Sivakov out, Gegenhardt out, Yates out, big money's gone out, and Carapaz, Tony Martinez, this is, we're talking maybe 12, 15 million euros plus they haven't matched out the door. Now, maybe that's freed up a slot. Maybe that's because the budget's constricted. I don't know. But in theory, they could get the money. If they go to Ratcliffe and say, hey, you want to contest the Tour de France next year? We got our guy. Here he is. Now,
to complete the storyline when it comes to Ineos, I do feel like we need to talk about the rumor about the Jumbo-Visma Quickstep Soudal Quickstep. I just switched that around.
But just on that, do you think which team would you pick if you were Roglic?
Between
Any of them.
oh
But between Bora and Ineos, I think they're the two.
yeah, I like the idea of Bora more,
Okay.
but he really does fit the system of Ineos. So it's kind of like
I'd pick Bora. I think they're better tactically.
I agree that they're better tactically, but does he need crazy tactics? He needs boring tactics.
True. And so then it's just who has the better riders to be a bubble around you, right? And deliver you.
Is it a myth that Roglic needs races with less kilojoules than Vingegaard, for example, on major mountain stages?
Yeah, I mean, Vingegaard's a monster. You can put 7,000 kilojoules in that guy. Just do 600 watts per kilo for 15 minutes.
Yeah, but Ineos is very skilled in fake pacing.
Yeah, like on Passo João.
Yeah, like put that on Tirreno on the climbs, for example.
Plusky all day.
I generally reckon that Ineos tactically would fit him really well, extremely well. But I'd like to see him at Bora instead.
I think Ineos might be like, this will hinder. I think it would take heat off Rodriguez and Pidcock, because Pidcock going to do Olympics next year. Half the team's fucking around the Olympics next year, right? So you bring Roglic in, he takes the heat off those guys to perform, going to win some races. He probably won't win the Tour, might not win the Tour, but he's going to win some races. It allows Rodriguez to develop it more, allows Pidcock to develop it a bit more, and then Pidcock has to perform at the Tour in 2025, 26 instead of 24. Whereas Bora, they're like, well, Hindley went for the Tour. I know he crashed. But
mate,
Bora do not think Vlasov, surely they do not think Vlasov is the solution to win the Tour.
We forgot the most important part of this entire discussion. When Sagan was at this team, what did he do all the time? That was excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Advertisements for
weird.
Bora and Hans Grohe, half naked in the shower with a bike. Roglic is not going to do that. He's going to be like, this is the most stupidest thing, eh?
No, he will. I think he'll do the same. And they'll just put it up.
That's bloody brilliant.
Like the Morton ad CG. Like the Morton ad he did with them. Not a plug, but maybe he did the Morton ad this year where he was like, like this is Morton. It actually got more engagement.
Yeah.
It actually gets more engagement. Anyway, sorry, you were going to move on, Benji, to draw a bow on it. I think this is separate to the Roglic thing is confirmed is happening.
Yes, but it's not completely separate. As in, I agree.
Oh, like Ineos are waiting, you mean?
Exactly. I believe that Roglic
because they could get Asgreen or Jalla or someone
of the merger rumors, but I think Ineos might be waiting to the conclusion of what happens with Remco in all of this, because it's a complex situation. I've been trying to figure out all the details
to change
and
every
so
day.
forth.
Every day there's a different article saying a different thing is happening.
Exactly. My idea of it is that Remco was at Soudal Quickstep. He's attached to Bacala, who was the main investor of Quickstep's paying agent, which is kind of like, is it like the company that is paying for the riders? He's attached to that company that is paying for the riders. Is that a right way to say it?
Yeah, Dekolev.
Okay.
Bacala owns the majority of shares in Dekolev.
He's attached to that paying agent. His future is dependent on what happens on that with that paying agent, because as long as he's attached to that, he can't go around and check other teams, no?
Yeah, you need permission. So under the UCI rules, you can't, as an agent, you can't shop your rider to other teams for the period in which your rider's contracted. Of course, you can say, hey, his contract is ending on this year. Are you interested for the years after? But for the current period when they have a valid contract, you need permission. Of course, maybe people don't always follow the rules, but technically, yeah, you need permission from the team itself. You need their blessing to go and solicit offers for the period for which you're contracted.
Because like Roglic's situation is that there was a buyout outside of his contract. Remco's situation is that he's got that contract with that paying agent, but if that paying agent gets merged into a team, for example, or ceases to exist, depending on how that works, if it ceases to exist, then he can probably go shopping around. Is it possible that the paying agent gets merged with Jumbo or Visma or
no,
whatever.
that's impossible because only one. You can't have multiple UCI World Tour license holders. So one,
Remco can always
the merger is kind of a, like, in terms of at a legal structure level, the notion of a merger is almost impossible because one has to be sold off or disappears into the ether. The World Tour licenses I'm talking about here. And you're right. So if that paying agent ceases, I think Brunel tweeted it, the paying agent ceases to exist or changes, Remco's contract or either UCI model contract, you can look it up yourself on the regulations. Technically, I think means his contract doesn't exist. It's invalid or terminated. So he's effectively on the free market at that point.
But if that's the annoying thing for me, because if the paying agent refuses to, it's just gone suddenly. How are all the riders that are in that paying agent going to be rewarded for the rest of their contract?
Well, you can sell it. You can sell that holding company. And so another company can just come in and it's just a new owner. You can call it what you want. Call the team what you want, get new sponsors. The UCI is also never going to allow you to just basically have that paying agent cease to exist and put those riders and stuff on the street. That's also just not going to happen. So but that's the tricky thing, and it's September 30th right now. But yeah, Patrick Lefevre wrote in his article today that he kind of, I didn't read the thing in full because my Dutch, it is good, Benji, as you know, but not quite getting there. It's in HLN, no?
What? Sorry.
Where's his article?
Newsblad.
Sorry, are they enemies?
Ooh, they're fighting.
Okay, he's in Newsblad, but yeah, he seemed to be a bit unsure of what was happening. To be honest, it seems a little bit. But he said, he gave a 3-day deadline.
Yeah, he basically said that hopefully this doesn't last for 3 more days.
Okay,
which is a lot of work in the next 3 days.
Because he said Bacala's coming to Europe.
There was a letter of intent signed towards this merger.
He said there's a letter of intent for the merger.
But there's no conclusion to it yet. And I reckon the conclusion is going to decide what Remco can do, whether he can go shopping for other teams or not. Because that is what I think some of the other teams might be waiting for.
Okay, so that's your point.
Yeah, that was difficult to get there. But
no. It's important to know. So Ineos and these other teams like Sharks, and I heard also from another World Tour rider on none of the teams we mentioned, contacted me saying, hey, a lot of teams, not even any of the teams we mentioned, have completely frozen all contract talks.
Yep.
Frozen. Like, and I'm not talking for big riders here. I'm talking for guys on maybe 100 to 200K. Guys filling out the 20th to 30th spot on the roster. These teams.
Logically?
Yeah, because they were, okay, what if Quickstep ceased to exist and all these riders flood the market? Why am I going to pay you 150 if I can get, let me pick a decent enough rider.
Masnada?
Nah, wouldn't pay more 150. If I can get Cataneo for 150.
Wow.
No, but Benji, if there's suddenly 20 riders hit the market at once and everyone's done their budget already, this is what happens.
Yeah.
The guys get underpaid if that happened. So I think all these teams are like, nothing's happening until we know what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the one thing I hate about all these merger rumors is that I reckon at the end of the day, there's always going to be a price paid by riders and staff in general. There's always going to be someone losing their job, whether it's staff or riders maybe getting underpaid by losing their contract with a certain team. So from that side, it's not good for the sport. From the side of Roglic leaving Jumbo next to that situation, but also Remco potentially joining Jumbo, I don't think it changed the entertainment level necessarily. I think it's just the same situation with those two GC riders at Jumbo.
I think it's more interesting.
Is it?
Yeah, because you have two new people in a different environment.
Yeah.
You have Roglic in a different environment. He's going to go against Vingegaard in the Tour. You would know that. And then how will Remco go in a new environment? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, if everyone was on different teams, that would be fantastic for viewers. But to your point, yes. And someone will usually lose out when this happens. And it might not even be the rise we're talking about. It might be the Conti rider who thought he was getting a Neo Pro contract suddenly gets told you're not getting it, who's not affiliated to any of these teams, because Astana all of a sudden picked up Masnada, as you said, for cheaper than they thought they could normally. But who knows what will happen. The weekend is long, and if Lefebvre is to be believed, there could be resolution, maybe, if not publicly, on the 1st, which is, how many days are in September? He said the 1st. But maybe he said Monday. Maybe he doesn't know that there's not a 31st day. I also didn't know in September. These things are difficult to understand. But yeah, we will do. So the podcast coming up. Wednesday, Lombardia preview. Whatever happens with this merger, non-merger with Jumbo. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention Amazon was also mooted by Kirchhoffs to be coming in to Jumbo-Visma, but we'll do that another time. When that news is confirmed by somebody, we'll do an emergency pod for that. When Roglic team is announced, we will do an emergency pod for that. Is there anything else that could happen?
We'll
Ineos and Movistar merge.
We'll eventually do a transfer podcast in general next to that, I reckon. We're also planning loads of off-season content, so we're not disappearing after Lombardia and our memorable Guangxi coming up as well, eh?
One pod. We're not doing dailies.
I love how 2 weeks ago you were trying to send me to China.
No, you said you didn't want to do Guangxi dailies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We're also probably going to Rouleau live as well and doing presenting there. So block out your calendars. I think that's November 2nd to 4th. We'll let you know more details in due course, but we've got that in the works as well. But yeah, we'll provide more details later. So yeah, a lot happening.
Hey,
this
you can have that up a bit more. It's our first live show.
No, I know, but we'll do a proper. I only organized a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
When we've got the details, I'll hype it up more. Don't worry. In case people were booking their Mykonos holiday on that weekend, cancel it. Anyway, wow, big off season, Benji. Have I been on holiday as well? Did I feel people know where I was? Have we done a pod since I was on holiday? I went to Sevilla, went to Cordoba, went to Madrid, went to Granada, saw lots of
why
religious sites.
Did you go to so many different places instead of staying in one?
Because I wanted to see the Alhambra in Granada. I wanted to see the mosque/cathedral in Cordoba. I wanted to see the palace and cathedral in Sevilla. I was thinking of starting an art TikTok account, Benji.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This man has become a TikTok man all over.
I am a TikToker, yeah.
I've become basically a British citizen.
True, you're living in the UK.
Since our last podcast. I moved to the UK officially. So,
well, that's when all this merger stuff was happening. It was like, I'm in the middle of the south of Spain with Airbnb Wi-Fi, and you're in the Eurotunnel somewhere. We were trying to take a week off. We normally block this week out. This week's off because nothing's going to happen here.
Exactly. And like the week started like moving to the UK, but yesterday I had the worst fucking day of the entire year where I drove back to Belgium with the car with which I moved because my parents would need the car for their work. And then I, in the same day, went back from Belgium to the UK with a train. So I've been gone for 17 hours of traveling yesterday. I'm completely fucked. Anyway, we live. And
life's tough for podcasters. Is basically if you want to, life's tough. Alrighty. Thanks for listening as always. Let us know where you think Roglic is going in the comments down below, and we'll see you if nothing happens with the Lombardia preview next week. Until then, ciao.